No, 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 no.
Okay, listen. I know what you guys are thinking. What happened to her elo? She was in the 2500s just a couple days ago. I don't have the best Pokemon for Master League. I've been trying for the past couple of days to make Yveltal work, and I have been getting destroyed because I don't have the best answers to Rhyperior and Fairy types, which are absolutely dominating in the meta at the moment. And just to give you guys an idea of what I was running before I put the Venusaur on the team, I was running Landorus in place of Venusaur, which made the team extremely weak to Primarina. I don't have a lot of options for the Master League, so I was really struggling to build a team around Yveltal because I do not have the best Fairy type counters. I have a Ho-Oh, but put Ho-Oh on this team and it is also going to be very weak to Waterfall Primarina. And I have a Landorus, which is kind of a fairy counter, except that Primarina is also going to give me such a hard time. But with Ho-Oh on the team, I was also extremely weak to Rhyperior, so I was just getting destroyed by all of these Pokemon. I do not have any Necrozmas built or like a Solgaleo or something, so I was getting desperate, and out of desperation, I ended up building probably the worst Pokemon I have ever maxed to level 50. It is this 15-15-12 Venusaur. It was a lucky, so I figured why not? I also have enough XLs to build a second Venusaur because I have been catching so many Bulbasaurs out of my desperation to find a Hundo. I have never been able to catch a Hundo or a 98 with 15 attack from this Pokemon. So I ended up building it, and you cannot convince me that Venusaur is not the best Pokemon in the Master League right now, because I was running into teams that were core broken by Venusaur. Not only core broken by Venusaur, but if I had just 3 Venusaurs on the team, I could destroy my opponents with just Venusaur. But unfortunately for me, there were some teams that I ran into where just one Venusaur wasn't enough. For example, I was running into double fairy teams. If I had more Venusaurs on my team, I could win. So I'm also really considering building a Hundo Roserade because grass and poison types are really strong in the Master League right now. They're going to be good against Pokemon like Xerneas, Zacian, against Tapu Bulu. I'm even seeing some Florges. They'll be good against Kyogre, Rhyperior, and they'll even do neutral damage to Pokemon like Landorus and Palkia. So, Venusaur right now, very, very underrated. I kind of don't want more people to use it though because I'm really depending on using this team for probably the rest of the week because like I said, I can't change it up. My options are limited, so yeah, it's a good Pokemon. I ended up getting 3 positive sets with this team, and one of the positive sets is a 5-0, and we're going to take a look at that today, but the team is going to be, as you've already seen, Venusaur on the lead with Yveltal on the safe swap. I'll use Yveltal to draw out the fairy types if there is one in the back, and I have Palkia Origin as a closer. The worst team composition you could face with this team is Ho-Oh Double Fairy, but I realized that in this season, Ho-Oh is a lot rarer, I think because of how common Rhyperior is, and Rhyperior is just scaring away all of the Ho-Ohs, and Dialga. Dialga is another Pokemon that this team kind of struggles against because Venusaur isn't going to be doing very well against it, Palkia will struggle against it, and Yveltal isn't really a solid answer to Dialga. But like I said, Ho-Oh, Dialga, much less common in this season, or maybe I was just getting lucky and I wasn't seeing too many of them, and that's why I ended up doing really well with the team. But you guys let me know if you're seeing a lot of Ho-Ohs and Dialgas because I didn't see too many. Alrighty, I'm gonna stop rambling right now because I'm sure you guys are curious to see the battles, so let's just get into them. You remember when I told you guys there were some teams that I faced where if I just had 3 Venusaurs on my team, I could have won? Well, this is one of them because my opponent is running Triple Fairy. As soon as I recognized that it could be Triple Fairy, I went ahead and double shielded my Venusaur against the Zacian that they brought into Venusaur, which is not an answer to Venusaur, but it is the best answer that they have on their team. They managed to take both of our shields, but then my opponent also double shielded Zacian They needed to get the Venusaur out of the way, and I need to get all 3 fairy types out of the way because my backline is going to be entirely weak to Xerneas, Zacian, and to their Primarina. Now I'm able to farm the Primarina down here, but here's a problem with Venusaur. It is going to lose CMP to a lot of the top meta Pokemon, like Xerneas, and my opponent had a lot of energy on their Xerneas. They're able to go for a close combat, take our Venusaur out, and they are going to be able to take that win. If I had 1 CMP there and gone for a Frenzy Plant, I could have probably taken that win. But GG's to my opponent, it was Triple Fairy. There was not much I could do. Now I'm going to go back to the first set that I played with this team when I was still in the 2200s. Sorry the games aren't in order, but I really wanted to cover this set in particular because it's the 5-0, so I put one of my later sets at the beginning of the video when I was explaining. But in this first game, we see a Xerneas on the lead. My opponent swaps into their own Yveltal, and because I'm going to bring in my Yveltal, I weaken them with a Sludge Bomb first before swapping, and I'm able to win switch. My opponent brings the Xerneas back in, and I'm even able to reach an Oblivion Wing onto their Xerneas. They just kept farming and didn't throw any moves from Xerneas onto my Yveltal, so I'm able to get them really low with Yveltal, and I think my opponent was calling that I might have something else in the back that was going to be weak to Xerneas, which is why they swapped out. They were correct. I have that Palkia. And their final Pokemon is going to be Ho-Oh. I was able to align my Palkia to their Ho-Oh. Their Ho-Oh is still alive though, so they are going to be able to farm our Venusaur down here, which is really dangerous, but I decide to bring in Palkia to take the move on Palkia, and my Yveltal should be able to come in and reach a move. I think I could have gone for a full Sucker Punch down. No. I would have died to the Incinerate. So at least I'm able to reach a move on my Yveltal, take the Ho-Oh out, and we're able to take that win. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a terrible lead of Ho-Oh. I swap immediately into my Yveltal, and I'm just going to sacrifice it completely because I'm calling that my opponent has a fairy type in the back, so there was no point shielding the Brave Bird. In fact, my opponent could have stayed in and incinerated the Yveltal down, but thankfully they bring in that Primarina, and hopefully Primarina is the only fairy type that they have on this team. I was really worried it was going to be a double fairy backline, but I go for an Aqua Tail here. I'm able to take a shield from them, and my opponent's final Pokemon is a Rhyperior. They're ABA weak to water types. Very interesting. I'm not going to shield the Breaking Swipe here because I know I can survive, and I might need the shield for later for Ho-Oh. So I swap into my Venusaur. I'm able to go for a Frenzy Plant, take the Rhyperior out. I can reach a Sludge Bomb on Ho-Oh, and this is why I saved my final shield, because I was calling that my opponent was going to be able to farm our Venusaur down, but because I had that shield left, they weren't able to throw a move. I was able to Dragon Breath them down, and we take that win. In this next battle, we see a Mamoswine lead. My opponent swaps into a Mewtwo, and as soon as they see the Yveltal, they go ahead and top left. I guess they were either core broken by Yveltal or Venusaur. We'll never know. But moving on to the next battle, we're going to see an amazing lead of Xerneas, and I go for the Sludge Bomb immediately against Xerneas, although I think you can win this going straight Frenzy Plant because you need to land 2 charged moves anyways, so might as well just go straight Frenzy Plant. My opponent is staying in, which is telling me whatever they have in the back, they might have another Pokemon that doesn't want to see this Venusaur, so I blind swap. As soon as I take the Xerneas out into my Yveltal, they brought in an Yveltal of their own, and instead of going for a move, they bring in Landorus, which is not an answer to Yveltal. They even take a move on their Landorus. I'm able to farm them down with the Sucker Punches and have so much energy for their Yveltal. I have a shield left, but they have 2 shields left. But I have 3 Pokemon left for this Yveltal, so I should be in a good position here. I'm able to take both of their shields with my Yveltal. I bring in Palkia. As soon as they see that Palkia, they go ahead and they top left. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against another really nice lead. This time it is going to be Zacian. Again, Venusaur is going to be walling Zacian. Close combat, wild charge, play rough. all of those are going to be resisted. Only the fast move is going to be doing neutral damage. We're able to land a Sludge Bomb on the Zacian, and now I just need to go for a Frenzy Plant, take the Zacian out, and because my opponent stayed in that matchup against my Venusaur, I am calling that whatever my opponent's third Pokemon is, it is going to be weak to Venusaur. So I save my Venusaur, I Blind Swap into my Yveltal, and my opponent is going to bring in a Palkia. Okay, I'm able to get the Palkia into the yellow at least. But yeah, my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Rhyperior. I land a Dark Pulse on the Rhyperior. They're in the red now. I can go for a Frenzy Plant here, but my opponent shields. Okay, I don't want them to farm my Venusaur down, so I have to bring in my Palkia now. I have 2 shields left, but I need to watch out because their Palkia has so much energy. They get one of our shields out of the way, and then they bring in their Palkia and they go for a move. I get really lucky that they do not bait us because I shield the Spatial Rend. I think they could have gone for an Aqua Tail and then a Spatial Rend, but we shield the Spatial Rend successfully and my opponent goes ahead and top left. And guys, that is going to be a 5-0 in the Open Master League with Venusaur. So not only did this save my elo, but it also made me start enjoying Master League again because I was getting sick and tired of seeing the same Pokemon over and over, and of course using the same Pokemon over and over. So this was a really nice change. But anyways, moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against an amazing lead of Kyogre. And uh-oh, my opponent swaps into a Zacian, which is telling me they have another fairy type in the back. Kyogre Double Fairy is another really common team, so I have to shield my Venusaur. I think I'm going to let this go, though it is a wild charge and we live, but my opponent swaps into Kyogre, and this is really good for me. This means I am going to have Palkia aligned to their Kyogre. I am going to save my final shield for my Yveltal. I might be able to take care of my opponent's final Pokemon, if it is a fairy type, with Oblivion Wing if I save the shield for Yveltal. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Primarina. It's Running Charm. I swap into Yveltal here and my opponent brings in their Zacian. They go for that Wild Charge. I have to use my final shield, but because they brought in that Zacian, I'm able to farm them down, have energy for their Primarina, and I am going to be able to Sucker Punch their Primarina down and take that win. Despite all odds, a double fairy backline, I was still able to get away with the win there. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to see an amazing lead of Tapu Bulu, and my opponent immediately swaps into a Palkia running Dragon Tail. Okay, I weaken it with a Frenzy Plant before I swap into my Yveltal. I'm able to successfully shield the Spatial Rend, which is good, and my plan was to farm their Palkia down and have so much energy that I can go for Oblivion Wings against their Tapu Bulu. But my opponent doesn't bring that Tapu Bulu back in. They bring in a Zygarde, and this is going to get really tricky for me because I have 1 shield left and I cannot give up that shield. So I have to bring in Palkia, take the Outrage, and then I'm going to bring in my Venusaur. I can take the first Nature's Madness, but the second one is going to hurt. I'm going to bait with a Frenzy Plant here, and hopefully I can take shields from my opponent. They have 2 shields left. We have 1, and I absolutely have to shield the next move from my opponent because it will be enough to take us out. But this is where I mess up. I should not have baited here. My opponent calls the bait. If I had just gone for that Sludge Bomb, I would have been able to take that Tapu Bulu out of the way, and I think I would have won this, but they are going to be able to take this win. Well played to my opponent. That was a double dragon backline, and that Zygarde was a little bit tricky for me to deal with. In the next battle, we're going to see an Yveltal on the lead, which is not a great lead for our Venusaur, so I swap immediately into our own Yveltal, and now even though my opponent let me throw my Oblivion Wing first, we are going to lose this mirror match because my opponent has the Buddy Boost on their Yveltal, so they win CMP. They're going to go for this Oblivion Wing, and I'm going to let Yveltal go, and I can't bring Venusaur into this and farm it down, so I have to bring in Palkia, go for a full farm down, and my opponent brings in a Landorus. Now, my opponent knows what I have left, so they have the option to align their final 2 Pokemon however they want, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Necrozma. I thought it was odd that they brought the Landorus into my Palkia, but this makes sense. Necrozma is going to be able to wall our Venusaur, whereas Landorus might have struggled against Venusaur. Now, I probably should have shielded here. This is going to be Sunsteel Strike, and I could have gotten shields out of the way with my Venusaur because those Frenzy Plants were actually hurting this Necrozma, and I could have made it to 2 Aqua Tails on my Palkia, but unfortunately, they are going to be able to take us out and take that win. Moving on to the next match, we're going to be up against a Magnezone on the lead. I did not expect to see this, but for a split second, I thought, what if this Magnezone is running Flash Cannon? Because they didn't throw right away. They could have thrown the Mirror Shots and potentially debuffed us, but they didn't throw right away. It turns out they do have that Flash Cannon. We're in the red now with our Venusaur, and I kind of panic here and swap into my Palkia. They were going to be able to farm us down anyways, so I bring in Palkia. I'm able to farm their Magnezone down. I, of course, had to shield the wall charge to keep my Palkia healthy, and my opponent brings in a Primarina, running Waterfall. This is telling me they might have a Kyogre in the back, because their Primarina is running Waterfall, and this is their best answer to Palkia. Then they might have a Kyogre in the back. I'm able to catch a Disarming Voice on my Venusaur and save my Palkia. And I was correct. My opponent is going to have that Kyogre in the back. I was going to be able to farm their Primarina down, so they had to go ahead and swap into Kyogre. I'm able to land a Spatial Rend on the Kyogre, and then my opponent goes ahead and top lefts, and we take that win. On to the next battle, we're going to see an amazing lead of Tapu Bulu. And now, although my opponent is staying in, I'm calling that they're going to go for a Nature's Madness and then swap into something that they have in the back. So I hold off on throwing any of my charge moves. They bring in a Hisuian Avalugg. I can align my Palkia to their Hisuian Avalugg and start going for these Aqua Tails, which are going to be super effective. And I'm going to be able to reach another Aqua Tail, but at the same time, I don't want to be in a range where their Tapu Bulu can come in and easily farm us down, because a lot of energy on Tapu Bulu can still be very scary for our Venusaur. So I swap out here into Venusaur, hoping to snipe the Tapu Bulu with a move, or at least take a shield from them. But they let the Frenzy Plant go. I go for a Sludge Bomb. They even let that go. And it turns out that my opponent is core broken by Venusaur, because their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Rhyperior. I recognize that I can save 2 shields for my Yveltal, and the Sucker Punches should do enough damage to take this Rhyperior out. My opponent recognizes this too, and they go ahead and they top left. GG's to our opponent. And guys, we have reached the final battle of the video. It is going to be another win, giving us a 3-2 in this set and taking us a little bit higher in ELO. And I'm just going to leave you guys here with a battle. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, maybe leave a like. It helps me out so much. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!